Hey guys, welcome. I'm Britt and I make landscapes. And today I want to do a little talk through of how I make my Blender to Photoshop pieces. And if you hear any meowing or jingling, Squeedo is joined with me today. So, anyway, let's jump into Blender. Now, a lot of these assets you see that I am either making or have already made are from old projects. Not the ones, of course, I'm making, but some of the older ones. Making windows, some bookshelves, I know, some arched roof. These were some of the initial ideas I had going into the project making it. So I make these assets so I can just do a process called instance to scene inside of Blender that allows me to duplicate the object without having to worry about if I'm going to actually go into edit mode and change it. Um, the only way I can change it if I go back to the original and change it that way. So you'll see me start to build out the scene once I have the play pieces basically. It's basically a Lego, just building it together. And I would normally have sketched out roughly a scene that I wanted it to look like the angle wise, how I wanted certain objects, what my focal point would be in either my sketchbook or Photoshop. And that way it would take the guesswork out of this part here in Blender. Unfortunately, I did not do that. So you're just going to see a lot of me playing around, trying to figure out what pieces do I want where, how do I want this to lay, do I want stairs, do I want bridges, and I wasn't too sure of the focal point, which I think was the biggest problem I had here. If I had planned it out ahead of time and thought, oh, I wanted this part to be the focal point, it might have been a bit easier. But that's no fun if it's easy. On the topic of making it easy, I have a lot of people ask, why do I start in Blender for these? And why not do the whole process when I'm sketching on top of the model? Why don't I do that in Blender? Blender is just a tool to help me figure out perspective, where I want certain objects to lay. I don't, at least I try not to rely on the model itself too much in the painting and sketching phase. It's just to speed up time so I'm not aggravated with perspective. If you know, you know, perspective is a great tool, but it can be aggravating, especially if you have a lot of different objects and you're turning them in space. Or if you want to move it slightly and you spent hours trying to figure out one way and then you move it and you're like, now I got to figure it all out. It's just Blender helps save all that time and frustration. It's beautiful. I do realize I'm not talking about how I model, and that's because I use a lot of quick keys, and it's hard for me to remember the quick keys off the top of my head. I just press them without even thinking. But I have been thinking of doing like either a live stream or a multi-part series where I do kind of talk more of the modeling aspect. Granted, mine is more basic and like very simple. It's not going to be anything stylized or fancy or whatever. I just use simple blocks and curves to kind of help me get the general idea of how I want it to look. But if you're interested in that, let me know below because I have been thinking of doing something like that for not just this, but any type of environment I do where I can hang out with you guys. You guys can ask questions in real time if it was a live stream, but you get the point. Anyway, back to this. But like I said, I didn't think of how I wanted this to look, so it was just a lot playing around. Now you're going to see a bit of a jump. And I'm going to pause here for a second. This is what the model looks like, and I pulled it into Photoshop and I started sketching on top of it. And then I had this idea, what if we had the giant window with the staircase? Kind of like if you ever played the newer Zeldas in the library, that staircase, I really like. I don't know, you can, I guess any kind of library would have that in the medieval time, but Zelda was the way I thought when I was thinking of this. So it's like, oh, that's a great idea. So it's gonna jump because I forgot to record me doing that. I apologize. But I did get rid of that little alcove on the edge just because I couldn't think of how that roof would connect there. So, other than that, that was the only change, I think. I think I added those bridges. Anyway, back to the sketching part of this. I use different colors to help with the sketch. It's going to be super rough. It's more of a proof of concept in a way. I don't really sketch the model too much. There is some of the sketching that I do on the model just to help me think, yes, I want to keep this. No, I'm going to cut into this. But I use different colors to help me later on in the process when it's like 5-6 hours later. I might have forgotten the idea I had when I first started. So you'll see me using green to indicate I want greenery here, blue for water, and different shades of red for the architecture. But it's just simple, help me out later on down the road. Yellow if I want like little lighting here and there. Because I was debating if I was going to make this more ruined or more magical, and I kind of combined the two. It leaned more towards the ruin aspect. So now we get to move on to my favorite part, the painting process. And you're going to see I'm going to have to go back and sketch a bit some out later, like the big arch. I used the pen tool to help me get that arch right, so my selection is nice and clean. And that stairway, I didn't fully sketch out how the stairs themselves looked. If I should have done that, but I was just super excited to get this color. It's just something I do. And I know a lot of this detail work I'm doing, like with the clouds and everything, are probably going to be covered. But I still do because I don't know what peeks out. Because I don't follow my sketch 1-to-1. I use the lasso tool and I switch between the polygonal, I think that's how you say, and the regular lasso tool to give me straight edge, or if I want nice curving edges, whatever helps me get a nice silhouette, especially on that rooftop. So I never know what peaks out, so I just color a bit more past the edge just in case. And if you've seen any of the other um, landscapes I've done, especially more recently, you've noticed I don't zoom a lot in those. I keep them at full screen at 100%. I don't zoom in to do these details. I typically only zoom in when I'm doing these these Blender to Photoshop pieces, because these are the ones I take more time on. Not saying I don't like doing the other ones, but these ones I'm trying to make sure everything's nice and precise. The other ones I see more as like quick sketches, how I get ideas down. I'm going to practice these techniques. I just want to get a certain look on it. Whereas these are more pushed more towards finalize. Now, some of the other ones I do are more finished pieces than others. I'm not going to say which ones, but I tend to zoom in on these more. These also tend to be a bigger file size than the others. So zooming in with the others would make them pixelate too quickly. Whereas this one, I can zoom in quite a lot. Like for reference, like these ones I work at 6400 pixels by 3200 pixels. And the other ones are about like a third of that. So just if you're curious why I zoom in with these ones, not the others. And the lasso tool is one of my favorite tools, if not my favorite tool, just because I can quickly select an area and keep it nice and clean. And the selection is nice and neat. It's not going to be all um, weird looking or muddy, and helps keep everything uniformed. So I love the lasso tool. It's phenomenal. It helps you quickly just fill everything in. And ever, I, you'll see it happening when I want to save the selection for later. If you go under select, save selection, it'll save that little marquee that you made with the lasso tool under the channels. And if you ever just want to reselect it, then you just control click on that channels and it just reselects it for you. Saves you so much time. It's wonderful. So many great tools. And you'll start to see Photoshop for some reason just deciding it wanted to stop working, so, or it's messing up. So you'll see these edges of the file are weird. I don't know what's going on. And it has like a bit of screen tearing when I'm moving the image. I'm sorry. Don't worry, I restart Photoshop multiple times to kind of get rid of that effect. But while I'm working, I do work foreground to background to foreground to kind of build a distance in the atmosphere, keep it all nice, consistent. So I don't put as much detail work in the background just because you don't really see it as much. So it's supposed to be further away, so you want to get rid of a lot of that, adding more duller colors to kind of help push it back a bit more. That's why they're not so vibrant. Even though they're right by the window, they're going to have a lot more light. But just working, building up the main structures of this before I go adding cast shadows, the greenery. And then I realized that there's no way that these stairs connected to where they're supposed to be, so I added a platform. And now we just add greenery and flowers. Nothing too crazy. Working on the roof, and I realized I wanted the roof to be the same color as that back wall to kind of connect it. I didn't want too much brown. I kind of wanted to bounce between brown and green with a little bit of red. And then making this look like a cracked roof that's falling apart. Shading, adding detail. And then adding some greenery coming off the edge just to give it a bit more earthy look. And then adding these book stacks here. Just like add a bit more environment storytelling. And working on the ground. Initially, I was going to do the entire ground, a wooden floor, and then I changed my mind to a stone floor. And then I realized most of that I want to have grass as nature's taking over, so I switched to doing the grass base, and then you'll see me doing a bit of stone peeking through instead of the other way around. I felt this was a bit more, I guess, easier, because then I can just make the shapes of the stone I want. It's just the method I chose. And I go in and add the detail on all the stone. And I'm going to add the water as a selection here. I'm not going to shade it and color it just yet because I want to see what the other colors around it's going to be for the reflections and everything. So that's just going to be a selection and we'll come back to it later. Now onto the baby bridges. And these baby bridges, they're also going to be made with stone, so I'm going to use the same purplish color here. Shade it, and I want that water reflect, so the water is going to shine up underneath the bridge. Just to add a bit of fun. And then I realized, what if we added some moss to the edges of these back bookshelves instead of just the drapery of greenery? So adding that in real quick. Adding some greenery on top of the stone bridges, and now we'll move on to the wall. And same as I did before, except these colors are going to be a lot more saturated because they're closer to us. And just taking it piece by piece. And because these are more going to be in the color off of the window on this side, it's going to be more of a blue. And the reason why it's not blue instead of yellow is because the light is coming from that big window and light doesn't bend like that. So it's going to be more of that sky color rather than the sun color. Now, these right side of this wall is going to have more of that sun color because when the light hits it from that big window, it does turn it a bit yellow. And I really like that those columns came out. Those are nice. And then using the lasso tool to break up each piece here so I can work on individually. Again, just helps me keep all the colors nice and neat, so I'm not trying to make them blend in together. And just spending a bit of time here, blending them, getting them nice, making it look like a bookshelf. And then adding the books. And then I'm going to add a bit of detail to these books because they're closer to us, so we can actually see them. One, and we can actually see the detail work on them. So nothing too fancy, just a bit of scribbles and dots, trying to give them a bit of personality. I say that's how you give personality. But that, and then adding woodwork. And then we're going to add some, put this more into shadow because that big platform above is going to cause a shadow to kind of help. And then we're going to do this window. And then our big bridge above. And it's going to get a lot of that blue light from this side window. And I did do a little bit of edge of yellow on the edge to kind of show it's getting that light from the big window, but not too much. And we'll do the other side same way as we did the left side. It's just we see a lot less of this one, so I'm not going to be too worried about adding a lot of detail to the books here. And then now adding in all the grass texture. And the reason why I waited is because a lot of that's going to be covered, so I wanted to make sure it got layered properly. So just going in, layering it, hiding some of the stone, so just peeking through. And then now working on the water, so just adding in the colors, blending them together, adding reflections, lily pads, some fish, and then working on this very front area, which I decided was going to be a bookcase with some books. And then we're going to move on to the final touches. So final touches, we are going to add a bit of a shadow, cast shadow of this big window, so the lattices and the steps are going to be casting a nice shadow, making sure we have some more cast shadows of the books and the bridge, adding some more greenery in the foreground, adding some atmosphere by adding a bit of fog in the back, and adding a bit of light coming from that both windows, yellow light coming from the big window and blue light coming from the other window. And I forgot to add the lights, floating lights I wanted. So we're going to add those in real quick. I'm going to start out with just a little ball and then adding a nice glow around them. And then adding the subtle light that's bouncing onto the objects around it. Like so. And we're going to add a bit of shading here just to darken the foreground a bit, kind of push everything forward towards us a bit more. And I am going to select everything here and condense it into one, and I'm going to blur it and use a layer mask, and fill it with black So it goes back to clear, and then using a brush on about 40% opacity, uh, and using the white to kind of blur a bit of the background and the lights to kind of, again, help push that distance. And I usually only do this when I am working on these big pieces. It just gives an extra little oomph. And just going in, blurring some things, helping it out. And then I'll add exposure layer and turn up the exposure slightly. And then do the same thing, fill it with black, using that layer mask coming in with white. And just adding a bit more lights to everything, giving it a nice, almost a foggy, bright feeling, if that kind of makes sense. But helps really push those values too, so that the brights are a bit brighter and the darks kind of stand out a bit. But those are just little final touches I do to kind of push everything. And then I realized, oops, I forgot to erase the cast shadow here on this back book, so I have to redo the blur layer. But I just keep it, select it, and then fill it with the same thing as before, so I don't have to fully redo it. But that is how I created this piece. I know it wasn't super in depth of how I do it, but I hope it was helpful. uh, like I said earlier, I am thinking of doing either a series or a live stream, but basically doing a Blender to Photoshop with you guys to kind of break it more down and show talk more into depth, especially more on the Blender side with modeling and setting up and grading assets and everything, and then moving into Photoshop. But let me know what you guys think. And I will see you guys later. Thank you guys so much for watching. And I don't know if I say this enough, but I do appreciate all you guys' support. And you guys are amazing and wonderful. Thank you guys so much for watching and enjoying what I do. I really like doing this, and it brings me a lot of joy that so many other people like it too. So, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I will see you guys later. I hope you have a fantastic day. Oh, yeah, before I go, I don't know why I said that twice. I do have more Blender to Photoshop time lapses. I'm not talking in them. They're just with music, but I'll have that playlist linked over here. And all right, I'll go. Okay, bye. I'll see you guys later. Have a good day. Bye.